So we have the Zoom started. Robin, this is Wes. Thank you for pointing it out. Hello, Robin.
Hi.
So we have three people here. We don't have a physical quorum yet. Should we go ahead and get started on the non-voting items, or should we wait till?
Well, I think what we have to do, according to what the attorney told me, is if we don't have a quorum, a physical quorum at the time that we start, we can go ahead and declare that we will change it to a workshop. Okay. Then you won't be able to vote on anything, but we can carry on with the meeting.
Okay.
I would suggest, and I will let Ms. Raznick weigh in, she's on the line as well. I would suggest that that is what we do so that you all can hear this budget item. It's very important. I don't think we're going to ask you to vote on anything on that tonight, if I'm correct, Claudia.
Okay, Robin, our quorum just arrived. Hello, Carl.
Oh, yay. All right, yeah. Perfect.
So never mind.
Never mind. Well, thank you all for showing up tonight, both board members, staff, and audience. Robin, if you would, please call to order. And give us a roll call.
Okay, you have to call to order. That's your role.
All right, I'm calling to order. Please give us a roll call.
Okay. Member Porter.
Here.
Member Fultz is absent. Member Lewis.
Here.
Member, I'm sorry, I'm doing this from memory, bear with me. Member Jacobson.
Here.
Member Crow.
Here.
Member Crow.
Here.
Okay. Let's see. I'm sorry, guys, bear with me.
Okay. Robin, if I may, if I can read them
Yes,
off.
please, because I don't have my list up in front of me, and I don't know. Oh, Member Rockwell.
Here.
Thank you. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
And then you have Teresa, Member Sterling Wood.
Member Sparling Wood and Member Davis.
Yes, those are the last two. Oh, and
I am here.
And Member, I'm sorry, Chair Wheeler.
Chair Wheeler is here. Did you call Member Fultz, who is not here?
I did. He
Okay.
is absent.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you for bearing with me on that. I do apologize for my lapse there.
No problem. Next up order on the agenda is the adoption of the consent items. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So it's not Member Jacobson moved or Member Porter seconded. Is there any discussion? Do we have any public comment on the adoption of the consent items?
No, Mr. Chair, there is no public comment at this time. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Hearing no comments or public discussion, I'll ask all members to approve. Aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Stands approved. First item on our agenda is State of the Utility. Mr. Brown. Oh, I need to adopt the agenda, the regular agenda. Thank you. May I have a motion to please adopt the regular agenda?
So moved.
Mr. Rockwell moved. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any member discussion on the agenda? All right, not hearing none. Any public comment on the agenda? Mr. Scott, would you like to speak to the agenda?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Okay.
Nathan Scott, so with respect to the adoption of the agenda, as the board will recall during the joint UAB meeting on April 27th, I implored both the city and the UAB to discuss and take immediate action to avoid what was an avoidable two-notch debt downgrade that cost GRU customers $32 million. I don't want to belabor the point. Historically, we've had 5 debt downgrades since 2012. We're looking at another one from Moody's and Fitch. I hope that the UAB will take what GRU is saying seriously. I hope that there will be an intelligent discussion about reducing the GFT by $12 million, which would help GRU have $12 million to pay off a mountain of debt. But again, I think what's important is the City Commission, with all due respect, remains agnostic to what should have been a wake-up call. And I asked them to discuss the debt downgrade at the City Commission meeting the day after, and there was no appetite to do so. And unless they change their behavior, and you're the advisory board to the City Commission, and you guys have a fiduciary duty that I certainly recognize as a former state utility regulator. I've tried for a decade to just give prudent advice to help guide both the city, GRU, and the UAB to make intelligent, financially prudent decisions to avoid this financial harm, which is now totaling, as you're here, from GRU $60 million of additional borrowing costs, $32 million for the most recent GRU debt downgrade, which was not a factor of the biomass or solar feed-in tariff. I mean, those were a result of the prior debt downgrades. This one was the failure of the City Commission to take immediate action to avoid what clearly was an avoidable debt downgrade that cost us $32 million on top of the $27.6 million in counting of the prior debt downgrades. So I just encourage you guys to, instead of, I want to say this respectfully, but I really think that you guys need to go hands-on. I don't think you need to ask permission to give advice. I don't think you need to ask permission whether you guys should make a recommendation on the GFT. You should listen to what GRU, as an expert, GRU management has told you. You should listen to what a former state utility regulator has told you and give your best advice and recommendation to the City Commission. And yesterday I presented a slide that suggested a $12 million one-time reduction to the GFT would be appropriate, that they should defer AMI for 1 or 2 years to avoid a debt issuance that will result in another debt downgrade, and that they should try to avoid a rate increase in FY22 that could be avoided. And GRU has been punished by having to cut its budget, but the city is not. I do appreciate your time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Any further public comment?
Not on this end, Mr. Chair. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Then I would like to hear approval or denial of the adoption. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. It is adopted. Now, Mr. Brown, would you please give us your state of Utah? Did you?
Donald Shepard.
Right. Did you want to speak on the agenda or on one of the agenda items?
Oh, I had nothing to speak about.
Because we just-
Only I wanted to speak about him coming into the meeting with being told 3 days now. Nathan Scott's been told to have a mask on, and he purposely came up to the podium
And took it off.
and took it off.
Yeah, and in the interest of keeping this meeting moving, I did not stop his comments, but I agree that it is required, and I appreciate your comment on that. Thank you,
Thank
Mr. Shepard. Mr. Brown?
Are you sure?
Third time's the charm.
Good evening, Tom Brown, Chief Operating Officer for GRU. I think in your packet, you'll find the utility reports for the last 3 months, including April. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on things. I'll be glad to answer questions directly, but I would like to, I think this past month, we did achieve quite a milestone with the change out of the turbine generator set over at Kelly. Had been in there some 65 years old, 1 week out. It was an amazing project to get it out through the north side of the building. We actually had to put shoring bracing underneath the turbine deck to make sure it could withstand the weight when we picked it up. And I don't know if you've been watching in the GRU Daily some of the pictures of it going in and out, but it's pretty amazing. The new generator set has been set in place. They're grouting it in as we speak. Most of the steam lines are welded and reconnected, but there are just literally thousands of wires that you might imagine connecting. This particular gen set has almost twice the computer inputs as the old one did, but it's an amazing project, really. With the exception of the outside of the building, it's pretty much been completely rebuilt inside. So it's going to be quite the project when it's done. I hope you all get the opportunity to go over and see it. We have taken a time-lapse photography of the unit being changed out. So I'm sure when it's all said and done, you'll see it go in and fast forward at one of the meetings going forward. Combustion turbine 4 is pretty much complete with its major overhaul inspection. We were supposed to be starting it up last week. We had a little slight issue with the second stage fuel nozzles. They were sent out over to Houston. They tested out fine. So we're going through that process of putting it back together, putting it back in, and trying to finish the troubleshooting on there. As soon as CT4 comes back online, we will be scheduling an outage for Deerhaven 2 to finish the transition to 100% gas capability up there. Everything's staged, ready to go. They're just on pause, waiting for the opportunity. So we have sufficient generation and we can afford to take that unit offline to make the conversion. And that outage is expected to last 6 or 7 days. So there's a lot going on in generation. But everything else within the utility is pretty much status quo from what I can see. If there's anything noteworthy that you want to talk about, I'd be glad to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Are there any board questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
When it's offline for the conversion, what is the backup power at that point?
Well, in some respects, it's the same as it always is. We have multiple avenues for backup. CT1 and CT2, they're both 17 megawatts, and CT3, which is 76 megawatts. So you have about 100 megawatts there that we normally keep in reserve. In addition, Deerhaven 1, the gas-fired facility, is capable of 75 to 80 megawatts. So that's typically what we have on reserve. And normally, you'll see that Deerhaven 1 is online at a very low load. So we call that our online spinning reserve. And of course, in addition to that, we have 2 tide lines, one to Duke and actually 2 to FPL that are capable. We typically limit ourselves to about 125 megawatt capability. So the balance of a generation would come from Deerhaven 1, or not Deerhaven, Deerhaven Renewable at 103 megawatts. And of course, CT4 is at 76 megawatts. So I think our plan is to probably purchase power from the grid to make up the load. And hopefully our load isn't too high. We're trying to get this done before the really hot weather sets in.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
It's all very normal and no real major issues or emergency situation or anything.
No. No, we're looking at the various scenarios to make sure we have enough generation supply. We would, in a worst case scenario, we'll push the outage at Deerhaven into the fall when the load drops off again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Are there any further board comments or questions? Are there any public comments on the State of the Utility report? Mr. Scott, we're going to require you to wear a mask when you come up to the microphone if you were going to speak there. Good. Well, I let you go the first time, but we can't continue that. So for the other board members and the public, we are having to have a slight recess here because we're having to clean the podium where Mr. Scott spoke about his mask, and he's been advised and asked to wear his mask. Once the podium is cleaned off, then we'll continue with the meeting. Thank you for doing that. Thank you. Mr. Scruff, do you have something to say about the city utility report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, protest, I mean, I respect other people's opinions, but, you know, when the mayor has just tweeted out what the president stated about not having to wear a mask, I mean, it becomes a little bit ridiculous. I do appreciate the city employees' concern, so, you know, out of her request, I will honor that, notwithstanding the fact that the CDC guidelines and me being fully vaccinated and the president's own statements. I mean, I think this is just borderlining on paranoia, fear, and ridiculousness at this point. But again, I do respect the opinions of city employees, so I will honor what was a request by the person that just sanitized the dais. The podium, excuse me. So with respect to the operational reports, I think that's really good. You know, I think there's a lot of good information in there. It's refreshing to see the UAB ask a question. I think Member Crow, you just asked a question about what's a replacement power for an outage, and I think GRU provided a question. I mean, certainly GRU has a, by any measure, excessive reserve margin, definitely the highest in the state, approximately, you know, well over 30-something%, if not closer to 50. So they've got adequate generation. In fact, they've got a glut of generation, which is part of the problem, and which is why we should not be adding additional capacity at this point. GRU's also identified that they have a single point failure in their West Circuit that would take down the grid in certain circumstances. Certainly they should be focused on fixing that, which is a $25 million capital investment that's never been brought forward to the UAB. It's never been brought forward to the City Commission. It's never been brought forth a notification that single point failure from a reliability and resiliency standpoint could compromise GRU's entire electric system. But again, that is what GRU asserted. Whether it's truth or not remains to be seen, because again, if the electric system is that fragile, as GRU says, then you think that they would have reported that not only to the Florida Public Service Commission, but to FRCC and to CERC, the UAB, and the City Commission, but they have not done so. So before we add additional capacity, I think they should fix their electric system to ensure transmission resiliency and reliability. I mean, because that's I was appalled when I heard that. And yet they claim it'd be $25 million to fix it, but I haven't seen a capital project requested. So that's something UAB might want to ask. And finally, I just want to make one final comment. I do appreciate the civility, Mr. Chair, that we've had here tonight, the willingness of the UAB to actually kind of listen and have a dialogue as opposed to things in the past, despite our differences on the mask. But in my remaining time, I just wanted to mention that there is an item that I won't be able to stay for related to the American Public Power Association, the $5,500 cost. I think that you should defer that and direct GRU to put that to the debt, because it's better use of debt than sending people to training. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Scott. Are there any further public comments on the city utility?
Not on this end, sir. We have nobody on the lines. The floor is yours.
Okay. Mr. Shepherd, did you have a comment? Thank you. Go ahead, please, Mr. Shepherd.
Yes, Donald Shepard, I'm People's Representative and running for mayor in March of 22. I'd like to hear more about the turbine that they removed in Dearborn too, and the wattage of that before it was taken out, and the wattage afterwards. Because the reason I'm asking is because I'm asking Nair Mohawk and Santa Fe Water Conservation to take and put a mill in the St. Augustine River so that we can, I think it's the St. Augustine and St. John River there that goes through Planka. And I'm going to be asking them to install that there so that we have closer and better water and not water, but electric performance. I believe in older days when they started it up in Buffalo, New York, the Niagara Falls, in Ohio, they had lots of energy in which to expend. And I think that this is the way of the future. The turbine utility is the way to take and go. The expenditures of the utility, I think, should be paid. If those things like the biomass, the coffer funds, the overlay of the 55 million that Nathan Scott talked about, I think that's to be paid out of this money that we got from the government, so that GRU is no longer under the water on the finances of it, and then we do not have to raise the utility bills to our customers. That's my opinion and outlook and knowledge in which I have throughout the 12 years I've served. And through my knowledge of the Niagara Mohawk and Ohio reserves, we're so much smaller. Is the way to follow those instructions of what to do next. And those are my plans. So,
Thank you, Mr. Tittle,
That's
for
my
your time.
questions.
I appreciate it.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, since there's no vote on that, we move on. There is no old business. We go on to new business. The next item is going to be discussion of GRU's proposed fiscal year 22 budget. Mr. General Manager, did you want to take the lead on making that presentation?
Yeah, I'll say hello and welcome everyone. And I'm glad we could meet so that you could have this little presentation by, I don't know if Claudia is going to do it or Mark tonight. They kind of tag team this thing. I think they do it just to box me out. So it's either going to be Mark or Claudia, not me.
So good evening. I'm going to let Mark take the handoff tonight. So we'll box that out and hand it off to Mark.
Yeah,
Thank you,
I'm
Chair.
sorry. I'm still recovering from Ed's comment that we keep him from speaking in public. So I'm going to try to share my screen here. Okay, I'm getting a signal that says the host has disabled attendee screen sharing.
Robin?
I might be able to do something here.
I am sorry. Let me figure it out.
See, we keep Ed from talking, and Robin keeps us from talking. That's the way it is.
There's a certain elegance to the whole thing.
No. Bear with me. I'm sorry. Ugh. Well,
Robin, if you elevate him to co-host, he might be able to screen share or host.
okay. I will try that. Thank you.
I don't know if Mark's ready for the co-hosting role, though.
That's pretty overwhelming, actually.
You have the power.
That's right. Yeah, I feel that every day.
Okay, try that, Mark.
Does somebody have like a parrot or canaries or something?
Can y'all see my screen?
Sure can.
Okay. Thank you, Robin. And no, I do not have a parakeet in my office, Ed.
Okay.
I do hear the squealing, though.
Mark, can you make it full screen? We can see the little sidebar there.
You need to make it a slideshow, view a slideshow.
That's what I'm.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, Mark doesn't work well under pressure, so let's give him a little bit of room here.
Thank you, Ed. I appreciate that. I am hitting slideshow.
And see where it says from beginning over there, Mark?
Yeah, let's try that. Here, is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Takes a village.
There you go. Well, yes, technology is not my strong point. So, Mr. Chair, the structure of this presentation is predicated upon direction from the City Commission at a prior GPC meeting. They asked us to come back with labor reductions, non-labor O&M reductions, and rate increase options to close the gap, the budget gap between our revenues and expenses. And the first two slides here really, we've got about 32 slides here, but the first two really boil the presentation down to the essence of the issue. And they depict the divergence in growth between our revenues and expenses over the forecast period. The foundation of this revenue projection is Mr. Kamhout in our rates area, his customer and unit sales forecast absent any price change. On the expense side, they're based on O&M requests from the operating departments, our debt service estimations based on current and forecast CIP, our utility plant improvement contributions per the formula based on our bond resolution, and then of course the GFT, and in this instance, the GFT assuming a constant $36.283 million through the period. The particular slide that you're looking at now represents expenses that reflect reduced debt service expense that result from the 2019 restructuring savings.
I'm not seeing the slides advance. Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. This particular slide, slide 3, excludes those savings based on the City Commission direction to use those monies to cash fund infrastructure investments such as DH2, CIS, and AMI. And we'll get into more detail a little bit later in the presentation, but what both of these slides demonstrate is that growing gap between our revenue and expense, and that's a gap which has to be covered through price change, expense reduction, or some combination of both. So how do we pay for running the utility? I referenced Mr. Kamhout's customer and unit sales forecast, and his 10-year forecast shows modest growth in the number of customers, about 0.6%. But at the same time, we're forecasting that our consumption per customer assets are going to decline slightly, about 0.25% a year over the next decade. And this combination translates to projected flat revenue growth over the next 10 years of about 0.5% per year. And so what this means at the end of the day is that if we're looking to solve this revenue versus expense gap that we showed on the prior slides through a revenue side solution, it's going to require a price or a rate change. It's not going to come from organic growth in our unit sales. And that's not a model that's unique to GRU among utilities, but our issue is that we are facing this flat revenue growth in the face of dealing with extremely high fixed costs from our high debt service, and this is contributing to our high rates, and it's complicated by the fact that as S&P pointed out in their report, this area has a relatively low median household income. And so it makes rate increases relatively more burdensome on our area ratepayers. At a recent GPC meeting, the City Commission set the required profit level for FY22 at $36.283 million. That's the GFT level. Our modeling is estimated with no expense adjustments, an estimated profit level of about $27.7 million, which leaves us with a significant gap to close. If we look on the expense side, for an expense side solution to this problem, we've got to acknowledge that there are certain elements of our budget that we have to maintain, the elements that provide for the infrastructure that's necessary to meet the safety, reliability, and regulatory requirements of our essential operations. All of our capital expense, our CapEx fits those standards, as well as the O&M, which fits the ordinary, reasonable, and necessary standard. There are also elements of our budget that are, that we call here nice to have. They're the softer costs associated with our budget, such as, retaining and developing individuals with knowledge of utility operations, being opportunistic about identifying capital improvement projects with high rates of return, and looking at projects that expand the value added to our customer services. When you take our expenses in context with our flat revenue growth, we've got a couple challenges on the O&M expense side. Obviously, our suppliers are going to pass along their cost increases as they incur them, which in many instances are noticeably higher than our organic revenue growth rate. A prime example is our chemical costs, on which we spend almost $5 million per year. Over the past year, those have fluctuated between a 10 and 20% increase. On the labor side, we are working to fold in the impacts associated with total rewards. And while our benefit costs are fairly well controlled, both of those are growing well in excess of the 0.5% that our revenues are. And as you saw in the first two slides that we covered, the difficulties of managing that gap, between projected revenue and expense in an environment where existing rates are relatively non-competitive is problematic. And all these items are contributing to the pressure on generating that required $36 million profit. So what have we already done? What steps have already been taken? As you'll see in a minute, a little more detail, we've reduced our annual increase in O&M expense to about 0.5% over the past 2 years. And this is while continuing to absorb those total rewards costs, as well as the incremental expense associated with the COVID pandemic. We've reduced our FTEs, that's full-time equivalent authorized positions, by about 1.7 positions over the last 2 years, and this is all the while maintaining the GFT at $38.3 million. And what is the commission asking us to do going forward? As I said before, they've set a $36.283 million profit level for 22 against a forecast estimate of $27.7 million unadjusted. There are only a couple paths towards closing that gap. One's an expense side solution that closes the gap entirely through labor and non-labor O&M reductions. One is a revenue side solution that closes it through price and rate change. And the third is one that combines both pieces, expense and price. And you'll see those options at the end of that we have put forth to the City Commission, that we actually brought to them last night at the end of the presentation. All right, this is a busy slide with a lot of information. These figures come from our audited financial statements from the period FY16 through FY20, as well as our 21 budget. And the takeaway from this is the fact that if you look at the total expense net of fuel expense line, you'll see that the annualized growth in this number over this 5-year period is about 3.68%. And over the last 2 years, it's about 0.5%. For illustrative purposes, here's the same information over the same period of time for general government. These figures were pulled from the general government annual comprehensive financial report and their 21 budget. And what they show is a 5-year annualized growth rate of about 5.12% and a 2-year growth rate of 9.85%. And we put this in here simply to point out that any increased expense on the general government side contributes to additional reliance on the transfer to fund operations. Here's our FTE trend. If you look back a decade ago in 2011, we had 842.6 authorized full-time equivalent positions. Today, controlling for the NACE employees, because they were personnel who were converted from contractors to employees after the purchase of DHR, our authorized FTE number is 835, which is a reduction over the last decade of about 7.6. And here is corresponding number for general government over the same period. Now, I want to say up front that the number up here is 234. They have a similar situation with the Department of Correction personnel. They converted them from contract labor to actual personnel slots, and there was about 35 positions there. So that corresponding number would be 200, but that's an increase of 200 over that period as compared to a reduction on the GRU side of about 7. Once again, we put this in here simply to demonstrate that an increase in positions is going to increase reliance on the GFT to fund their operations. These next two slides are simply the same information in graph form. Here's the GRU number you see from 842.6 and 11 to 835, and the general government number from 1311.75 to actually, after you control for the Department of Corrections personnel, puts them in about somewhere around 1,510. So we get this question all the time. What's so tough about finding cuts in a budget that's north of $415 million? Well, first off, we have to look at and have to consider that we have a lot of non-discretionary costs, and you see them listed here. $97 million in debt service, that's obligations to our bondholders that we can't adjust. Fuel is another $86 million, and while our fuel group works very hard to acquire fuel and does a great job of it, acquiring it as cheaply as possible, because obviously there's a bill impact, it's a pass-through, and so as we reduce fuel expense, we also reduce fuel revenue, so there's no net budgetary gain from that, so that comes off the top. Our utility plant improvement fund, which is our that's our equity investment in our infrastructure, and it's determined by a formula from our bond resolutions, $44 million, and then you've got the transfer at $36 million. So you've got $263 million in non-discretionary expenses that come immediately off the top and leaves us, and this is Ed's phrase, the artist in the group, the theoretically touchable, which I would probably use the word. It's at that point it's the next level of whether or not the costs are discretionary or not at $152 million. Of that $152 million.
Let me interrupt for a second. I'm sorry. I was trying to play with, you remember our unflushable campaign. So it was kind of the untouchable, the unflushable, get it. When you get home tonight, you'll laugh.
I was going to say, let me mull it over a little bit, and I'm sure at some point I'll break into uproarious laughter. Of the $152 million, $76 million of that is non-labor O&M, which we have reviewed and deemed as required for safety, reliability, regulatory, and essential operations. And the balance, the $74 million, is personnel costs. It's current staffing levels. And as we just pointed out, our staffing levels right now in terms of our authorized FTEs are lower than they were a decade ago. So we talk a lot around here about transparency. And this is about as transparent as we can be. This is a listing of that $76 million for every GL in our budget. I'm not going to, although I can if you want, well, even if I can if you want to, but I don't plan to walk through each one of these. You can see there's some fairly significant numbers. As you can see right at the top, we have to pay ourselves. We have to pay for the power and the water that we use, and our water and wastewater plants are huge consumers of power, and they're the leading piece of that $9.8 million. Contractual and outside services, we surveyed all of our operating departments, they supplied us with the reasoning behind both the contract and outside services at $9.8 million and a little farther down, the professional services at $3 million. The point here is that we've gone through this list, and with this one as well as the one that's going to follow, you're always going to have people who can make arguments on either side as to whether something is discretionary or non-discretionary, but our operating departments have done a good job at looking at this and providing the determination for why these things are all essential. These are the softer costs, the about $2 million of what we are tagging as discretionary. Like I said, I'm sure that there are items on each one of these items on here where someone could make an argument that it's non-discretionary, but to the best of our assessment, this is where the $2 million in our non-labor we would go to if we had to make cuts.
Mark, let me just, could you go back to that slide just to let them have a flavor of this too? The advertising, marketing, photography, publishing, that's basically the entire non-labor portion of our communications department. So that is the Untouchable campaign. That's our stormwater, our storm management system. That's our inserts into the bills that alert people of the irrigation schedules and things like that. Most of that is education. The community outreach is literally the entire non-labor part of Yvette Carter's community relations department. Office and supplies, printing, that's the entire cost of office supplies, printing across the organization. So I guess unless we went entirely paperless, didn't print anything, we could do some of those. But even with that, we said, okay, this is discretionary at one point or another. So I'm sorry, Mark, go ahead.
No, that's okay. So the next two slides, take a look at our debt service. This first one is debt service on the bonds that are currently outstanding. As you can see, we have a bump up in 2025 from 90, from the low 90s to the low 100s. The 2019 transaction restructured our debt to give us near-term debt service savings when we knew that this step up was coming, and that's what's demonstrated there. The debt service in terms of P&I over the life of this currently outstanding debt is about $2.4 billion. About 1.6 in principal and about 2.4 billion altogether. This next slide shows what if we do nothing other than our normal borrowings through 2030. This is what our debt service is our outstanding debt service is going to look like. We are like any other utility with generation assets, we're capital intensive. We're going to have to access capital markets every 2 to 3 years to secure funding to assist us in acquiring, constructing, maintaining our infrastructure. And that's particularly true for us because, and Tom's on, he can correct me when I bungle this, as I'm sure I will. I think we have 5 generation assets that are in excess of 40 years old. They require a good bit of maintenance and oversight. This graph shows the debt service on those. If we go out every 2 to 3 years as we plan, just through 2030, that debt service obligation is now grown to $3.2 billion. And that does not take into account any CIP past 2030. It doesn't take into account any changes in our infrastructure acquisition or construction associated with the 2045 100% renewable policy. Excuse me. So we'll talk a little bit about our bond rating background and our history prior to the downgrade that took place last week. We've been downgraded a number of times over the past decade. This slide shows where we were in 2010 versus Current day, as you can see, in 2010, we were solidly a AA rated utility for all three major rating agencies. Today, we have only one AA rating. That's from Moody's. These downgrades come with potential additional costs from our capital plan. When we go out to borrow debt, it's going to cost us in terms of the price of that debt. For the variable rate debt, it costs us right away. For the existing variable rate debt, we remarket that daily and weekly. We're going to see costs go up in that regard. It costs us immediately in terms of our credit support, our liquidity support agreements. There are clauses in there that set the basis point fees for those support agreements based on rating structures. On the swap side, it is going to increase the possibility down the road that we will be subject to collateral posting requirements. As you see the asterisk down at the bottom, currently that is not the case, even though our collateral thresholds fell with the last rating downgrade. We have not yet reached the point where we have to post collateral, but it certainly makes that more likely. For the four downgrades that we received prior to the most recent S&P event, our financial advisor, PFM, estimates that we'll incur approximately just under $28 million in incremental costs across these categories over the life of that debt. This is a little more granularity about the ratings history. Like I said, back in 2010, we were AA rated by all three agencies. In 2012, Fitch downgraded us from AA to AA minus in the wake of the 2012 restructuring. In 2015, S&P downgraded us once again from AA to AA minus. In 2017, Moody's downgraded us from AA2 to AA3. And in 2019, Fitch downgraded us again from AA minus to A plus. And then last week, we got a 2-notch downgrade from S&P from AA minus to A, citing high rates, high leverage, and the potential unfunded mandates from the 2045 100% renewable policy.
As well as a high GFP.
That's correct. As to the financial impacts of the recent S&P downgrade, like I said, some are going to happen immediately. Some are going to increase rates on existing variable rate debt and liquidity support, and some will come down the road as we undertake new debt issues. An A rating on a utility, combined utility our size, is not typical, nor is a 2-notch downgrade. Multiple notch downgrades are usually associated with specific events, such as the freeze in Texas in February or the lawsuit that JEA engaged in with MEAG over the nuclear facility. Our 2-notch downgrade was not precipitated by an event. It was precipitated by an accumulation of past events that have translated to high rates, high debt, and particularly financial inflexibility. So, we talked about the fact that the prior downgrades, the accumulated costs over the span of that debt portfolio is about $27 million. PFM has estimated that the 2-notch downgrade from S&P is going to cost us another $32 million through 2051, and that does not account for any ancillary legal fees. Like I said, potential swap collateral postings. If the market environment holds, we hope and we anticipate that we'll execute a refunding of the 2017 DHR bonds in 2027 when they become callable. PFM estimates that the incremental costs associated with the borrowings coming from the S&P downgrade could cost us as much as $5 million over the life of that refunding. It changes GRU's reputation, not only with investors, as you see in the next bullet there, but also with our counterparties. We do business with banks. We do business with counterparties for liquidity support, for swaps. The rating agencies' ratings are their view of our of our riskiness to investors and to folks that we do business with in the market, and it is going to have an impact on the way we do business with some of these groups going forward.
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
Yeah, I think Claudia is raising her hand for something.
Okay.
She wants to go back to the macro level that's shown on slide 2 when you're done. Oh, do you want that?
When he's through.
Okay. Okay. Sorry about that, Mark.
That's okay.
While I interrupted you, I wanted to mention that it's really interesting. Our Treasury Department, the BFA group that we have, deals in incredibly sophisticated financial transactions. A utility the size of GRU is not typically so sophisticated and not so complex. But because of these transactions and because of how we've had to manage through some of the structural deficiencies that we have within the organization, I mean, let's face it, that's why we have to financially engineer this utility to try to mitigate those structural deficiencies that have been brought on, by these ill-advised contracts and, the cost structures that besiege the utility. So it's incredibly complex. And so in a lot of ways, the utility is much more beholden to the rating agencies and good ratings or, AA ratings to secure that complexity, to put the utility in good stead in the future. And I just want to remind folks that, these folks that we're talking about, the rating agencies, this is not Wall Street guys and venture, capital groups. These are people that are providing ratings for people like insurance companies that are looking to invest money at a very secure level so that they can make the payouts on life insurance policies and things like that. They're looking for secure 3, 4, 5% returns on their investment. They're not looking to double their money and do the other things that, is associated with Wall Street bankers. This is the low end soup and nuts part of the financial industry. So go ahead, Mark. I keep interrupting. I apologize.
No, that's a great point. So what were the primary reasons behind the downgrade? I mean, you can read, and you probably all have read the S&P write-up, but in a nutshell, it's high rates and high leverage, and they consider that the product of investment in renewable resources that have proven to be uncompetitive. The contracts that Ed just referred to, significant general fund transfers to support the city's general fund, below average median incomes, which limit our rate raising abilities, and the risk of the 100% renewable goal becoming an unfunded mandate. And I want to make this clear, and I probably should have done this sooner, because this question came up yesterday. Rating agencies have no problem with renewable energy. Investors are looking for it. They're perfectly comfortable with it. What they were telling us as they met with us on this piece is that we need to get our financial house in order as we stand today, and certainly before we move forward to undertake something that has the potential infrastructure costs associated with 100% renewable policy. But they are not adverse to renewable energy in and of itself. It is the financial situation in which we find ourselves before we embark upon that makes them uneasy. So the bottom line is, like I said before, we were a AA utility. We are now firmly an A-rated utility. We have a single rating agency that rates us in AA, and now Moody's is an outlier. Even before this last downgrade, we could say that that Fitch at A+ didn't have us in the AA sector was the outlier. That's not the case anymore. We've talked about this, $27.6 million of increased costs with past downgrades, an additional $32 million projected for the 2-notch downgrade we just received. So that's these 5 downgrades over the life of the debt that they cover will, we're estimating will cost us about $60 million in incremental costs, borrowing costs, and costs associated with our liquidity fees. In terms of the future risk to our debt profile, we talked to Fitch last week. They were in the process of doing their annual review when we in the course of the discussion, when they found that we're coming to the market and coming actually to UAB and the City Commission in the summer for an additional bond issue. They preferred to wait until we do that issue to issue the next rating. Moody's we haven't had a discussion with since January, but it's certainly possible, if not likely, that we could see a downgrade from both of those institutions. Certainly Fitch and perhaps Moody's. We haven't had as much conversation with Moody's over the last 6 months as we normally have. But at the end of the day, S&P's assessment is that the combination of rates and high debt levels could impair our ability to fund our future capital improvements. These next 2 slides are just, basically just lay out the costs that we just covered. So the bottom line, the GFT needs to be formulaic, and it should be tied to GRU's profit. And at this point, I'll step in and say that last night, the City Commission, as part of the motion that they were considering, certainly indicated that they were willing to move to a $2 million per year reduction in the GFT over the next 5 to 6 years. So that would bring it more in line with our profit levels. If you remember last year, we did a set of 2020 financial transactions where we did 7 transactions in the period of 6 months and generated about $134 million in restructuring savings from those transactions. The price tag, the $32 million price tag associated with this S&P downgrade is going to eat up about almost 25% of that, of those savings. Our revenue growth is minimal due to that combination of low customer growth and a decline in consumption per customer. And in the face of this low revenue growth, we have extremely high fixed costs, and flat revenue growth and high fixed cost is a recipe for financial inflexibility, and it's not a sustainable model, and it's placed significant pressure on financial pressure on the utility. We have controlled costs significantly over the past 2 years. We talked about the 0.5%. It's questionable whether that level of cost control is sustainable and makes further expense reductions difficult, if not impractical. Once again, we talked about the fact that just through our normal borrowings, our debt service is expected to rise from $2.4 billion to $3.1 billion by 2030. That's going to increase our leverage and raise our potential for future downgrades. On the next slide, you're going to see 5 options for closing the gap. 4 of them include non-labor owned expense reductions. 4 also include staffing reductions. 1 includes closing the gap entirely through rate increases. Given the level to which we've already controlled costs, we cannot readily support the O&M expense reductions as we are past the point of being able to trim expense and maintain safe, reliable levels of service. If labor reductions are chosen as part of that budget package, we don't support moving forward with AMI and CIS since these projects can't be successfully implemented without adequate labor support across the utility. And while acknowledging the impact on our rate payers, we reluctantly support rate increases to adequately fund our infrastructure. We continue to support revisions to the GFT to bring it in line with our profit levels. And we will be bringing back to the commission the following items for consideration: a set of ordinances to codify multiple year rate increases, CPI type rate increases, acceptable levels of leverage and steps to achieve reduction to those levels, a GFT formula, and target levels of credit metrics. So here are the 5 options that we presented to the City Commission last night. Option 1, layoffs or elimination of FTEs of 109 to 122 employees. That's about 13% of the workforce. That equates to about $10.9 million, and reductions in non-labor expenses of $2 million with no electric rate increase. Option 2 is laying off or deleting 112 to 129 FTEs. That's the full 12.9 million, 14% of our workforce. No non-labor expense reductions and no electric rate increase. Option 3, eliminating 44 to 57 FTEs. That's 6% of the workforce. $2 million in labor and in non-labor expense reductions, and an electric rate increase of 4% that'll generate about $6.5 million. Option 4 is 60 to 75 FTEs being reduced to the tune of about $6 million. That's 8% of the workforce. $2 million in non-labor expense, a 3% electric rate hike that'll generate about $4.9 million. And you'll notice that all of those options, all 4 of those options contain staffing reductions, and therefore you'll see in the bottom left corner of each one that with those come our recommendation that we can't move forward on CIS and AMI. The 5th option is the one that GRU is recommending. It is no layoffs, no staffing reductions, $2 million in non-labor expense reductions, and a 7% electric hike to generate $10.9 million. The City Commission last night moved forward with a variant of, or not moved forward, they asked for more information on a variant of option 5, whereby it would be, they asked us, and in fairness, they asked general government as well, to come forward with budget reductions at a cap of $5 million that contained elements of non-labor expense reductions, as well as eliminating vacant positions, no filled positions, but vacant positions, and then a piece that would be associated with a rate increase. Here are the budget impacts, the bill impacts associated with those budget options, both at standard consumption and average consumption, assuming that an individual takes all 4 services. So option 4, like I said, that's a 3% electric hike, a 5% wastewater increase, and 3% in natural gas. And the wastewater and natural gas increases are in all 3 of these options. Would cause a monthly increase in an individual who has an average consumption would be a monthly increase of $4.44. Option 3 is the 4% electric hike, and that would be an monthly increase of $5.13. And then option 5 is the 7% hike with a monthly increase of $7.21. So that is all I have. Claudia, you wanted me to go back to slide 2?
Yes, if you could, Mark, thank you. So I wanted to bring everybody back to kind of like a macro level view of what's been happening at the utility over the past decade and the projections going forward. There's a lot of information in this presentation and a lot of complicated topics. So in 2012, the utility executed a restructuring of its debt. And so that had the effect of pushing your debt service out and then providing a buffer between 2012 and 2019. 2019, that buffer ended. So the utility at the beginning of 2019 was faced with declining cash levels, a potential CIS project, an AMI project, and debt service going back up after the 2012 transaction. So the commission, when faced with these things, decided to execute the 2019 transaction. And so this is important because if you look at the levels, so the blue bar are revenues, the red bar are expenses. And you can see for 21, 22, 23, and 24, they look very close together. So, and then you look at 2025, you see that spike up, that's debt service. So what's sitting in the expense side of things are O&M costs, UPIF, debt service, of course, and the general fund transfer, the return on investment to the general fund. So you can see that in not one year, for 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, or 27, does the utility earn anything to match the expense side of things. And so this is incredibly important because as we move forward, the utility still has to issue debt in order to maintain its infrastructure, unless the commission and the board say, we don't want to maintain that infrastructure, stop issuing debt. And I don't think that's the case. I think that we're going to continue to issue debt, which is going to increase that debt burden. It's going to increase that red bar, and it's going to increase that red bar still beyond GRU's ability to pull revenues in. The only way to pull additional revenues in because of the flat growth that's here are rate increases. So the significant bumps down in our expenses are the general fund transfer or debt service. And you can see where the debt service has been completed that way. Mark, could you go to slide 3, please? Thank you. This slide is before the debt restructuring. So you can see the gap was even further. It's very large. So 21, 22, 23, and 24, had a much larger gap between revenues and expenses, and there's still that spike up coming in 2025. So this window, the 21, 22, 23, and 24, is the commission's window. So if you go back to slide 2, Mark, thank you. So this is that window. And we've been working with them to try to get the general fund transfer down, but we're going to have a spike coming, right? And so when we're talking about decreasing the labor force at GRU, that could have some unintended consequences. One consequence that we spoke about tonight are the inability to do the CIS and AMI projects. An unintended consequence could be damaging the infrastructure, the very infrastructure that we're trying to maintain with less and less. So the operational areas work with less and less, but the maintenance is more and more because of the age. So this becomes really critically important here. So the 7% with no labor force reduction keeps the people so that they can maintain things. They can service the customers. The 7% is essentially CPI for 2 years. Last year, there was no base rate increase in the electric system. That 7% puts a floor into the utility going forward, barring any additional projects that are put onto the utility. We're looking at CPI after that. None of this includes the renewable energy goals or plan. And that's important as well, because the S&P and the investors, they do like renewable energy. What they do not like is not having a plan and a way to fund it. So the four things that need to be brought back are the delevering policy, you know, the GFT resolution to put those numbers in place, the rate ordinance, and then also a kind of a credit metrics policy with the commission. But we should also really look at a renewable energy plan and try to figure out how the board and the commission want to finance that. That was a key point from S&P. So I just wanted to kind of wrap that up because there was a lot of information that we covered, but this is what the rating agencies are looking at. So they're looking at the utility here in Gainesville that's not earning enough to cover its expenses. That's why you have a high GFT. That's why you have a high debt service. That's why they're noting those things. And that's why you have high rates. So appreciate that, Mark. Ed, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said that. I mean, you just went through and showed the structural deficiency that we have financially within the organization and why we, what we have to do to recover from that. The other thing that's happening is that, we've been talking about this, warning about it, alarming about it, and I think there's a sense that it's never going to happen. And then as it gets closer and closer and other decisions are made, to a lot of people, it comes as a shock or a surprise, but reality is that it's been coming all along. And, there are things that are going to happen in rapid succession here. One of them is happening right now. And I brought it up before the city commission last night because we're ready to execute the contract with Itron for the AMI work. What happened when the decision was made not to reduce the general fund transfer to what the utility earned, instead it was artificially high at $36 million, is that action took away the funding for AMI. So if we're ready to sign the contract that we've worked over the past 3 or 4 months, maybe as high as 6 months on, we can't sign it unless there's funding for it. So that's why I brought that issue before the city commission last night. We need to know where that money will come from. And, you can take it from here, Claudia. What you're looking for, from the financial perspective.
So the debt service savings from the 2019 transaction, it was designed to do a couple of things. One was to obviously issue new money to fund the capital infrastructure, to replenish UPIF, and to build up the cash levels that were scheduled to be depleted. The presentation, I believe it was in February of 2019, showed, I think, 52.4 million decreasing in cash. And so the transaction is doing exactly what it was designed to do. That's what it was designed to do. The act of not reducing the GFT in conjunction with not approving the rate increases is what's impacting that funding source. So for us to sign a contract without knowing how it's going to be funded, it's not prudent business practice. I'm sure everybody could agree with that. So we're in a holding pattern with AMI right now. If the rate increases are approved, that allows for that funding source.
Thank you, Mark, for the presentation. Just in case there's anybody listening from the public, if we could do an acronym check real quick, please explain what CIS and AMI are. It was used a lot. So Mark or Claudia or Ed, whoever would like to take that.
AMI is Advanced Metering Infrastructure, and CIS is Customer Information System. So AMI is what everyone comes to know as smart meters and, that technology. And CIS is what is known as, the kind of the the dashboard and system that helps us communicate with our customers in an easy pattern, along with the communication software with that. So when customers call in, the customer representative that they're talking to brings up one screen and has all the meter information, customer information, doesn't have to go through 12 or 13 screens, but can, get to that quickly and efficiently.
Can you define the UPIF for a second?
Sure. So I want to hit CIS if you don't mind, just real quick. So that's the billing system, and it was installed in, I think, 06 or 07. So it's way past its useful life. So that's why that needs to be updated. UPIF is Utility Plant Improvement Fund. It's for construction projects. And I do have one more point, Chair, but not on those two topics.
Go ahead.
As part of the motion last night, the motion was to bring back a draft of a resolution reducing the general fund transfer. So we're currently working with the city attorney's office to get that completed, along with the other 3 items that are that Mark mentioned earlier.
And while you're mentioning that, Claudia, if I could just follow up, what was the direction on rate increases?
There was no direction on rate increases.
Thank you.
Which is what creates the conundrum.
Thank you, staff.
But we did, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, I apologize, I didn't mean to interrupt. What the direction we did get was that both general government and GRU ought to find up to $5 million apiece in expense reductions and come back to the city commission with that. Is that how you read it, Claudia?
That's correct.
And then in regard to the resolution, they were talking about a $2 million reduction every year for the next 6 years.
Thank you. Do any board members?
Chair?
Do any board members have questions or comments? When do I see you raising your hand? Would you like to go
Yeah.
ahead?
I want to point out something that I hear in the community and the city commission and various places. The O&M category of money is a kind of a large chunk, and it's always a thought that you can always reduce expenditures. We have an extremely finely cared for elderly utility. That is actually, in my point of view, a silver lining. If the utility had not taken such good care of the elderly equipment we have, we would be faced with a situation with all this debt and having to build a brand new, large fossil fuel power plant right now that would most assuredly become a stranded investment before its lifetime was over. So the fact that we don't have to make that decision is actually a very, very good thing. And it totally relates on the fact that this utility and this management team taking good care of this equipment. So thinking that we can do something with O&M that's not extremely dangerous at this point in the game is penny wise and pound foolish. I'd furthermore like to add that you got to call me surprised. I did not think that the city commission, faced with these explanations the last couple of years, would have come up with essentially no change in the general fund transfer. I did not think we would get to this position, but having gotten here, I would definitely say we're in a pickle, and the easiest way to solve this is for the city government to pitch in and own part of it.
Thank you. Fletcher, I see your lights on.
Yeah, I've got a question. If you look at this chart that we have up, I guess, on the screen right now, you can look at the delta between the expected income and the expected revenue, and it leads to a certain amount each year that varies. How much are we talking about reduction of the GFT?
So it was 2 million for fiscal year 22. And the direction was to come back with a draft resolution that the commission would have to vote on for 2 million a year going forward. I think it was through 2027.
Well, 2 million is a lot less than the delta in these red and blue bars, you know? So it wouldn't make them equal. So you'd still be stuck with a heck of a problem, right?
That's correct, which is why the rate increase. It's important for a lot of reasons. So that rate increase fills in that blue bar.
And that would be the 7% that you had in option 5?
Yes, but I want to make sure I'm being very clear with this. We always talk about the electric system because that is the most sensitive system to everyone. Wastewater has 5% rate increases through the foreseeable future because they have upcoming infrastructure needs. And the gas system has 3%. So again, the electric system is what everyone wants to talk about, but there's still 5% in wastewater and 3% in gas.
Let me jump in here, Member Crow. I think part of what you're asking for as well, the general fund transfer reduced by 2 million a year, but to make GRU whole, if you will, you know, we were looking for it to go from 38.3 million to 27. So we were looking for almost $12 million, and we got 2. So I think that was more to your point.
Yeah, well, if you look at the delta between the red and blue bars, 12 million would really help the situation perfectly.
Yes, that's correct.
Member Rockwell.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. I think I'm getting some echo.
Someone has a microphone? No? Try to get.
Okay, there we go. I have a couple of questions and then maybe some comments. My first question is when we're talking about layoffs, of course, you know, which employees are we talking about? How do you determine that? And then can GRU maintain the same level of service with those staff losses?
So I'd like to make a point surrounding Member Crow, and then I'll answer that particular question. That 27 million still has a 2% rate increase built into it. In order to allow the utility to retain a portion of that investment, the number is really 22 million. There's a larger gap that we're not necessarily talking about. That 27 million essentially says everything that GRU has earned is now going to the general fund transfer. If we were to retain any funds back into the utility, like other utilities do, that number really is 22 million, and it creates a different gap. Regarding the layoffs, there was a motion for GRU to come back with options to reduce labor, which depending on the dollar amount do end up being, you know, physical employees. It can also be vacant FTEs. So the options that you saw were that range of whether it was, you know, a physical person sitting in a chair or an FTE. And I just want to be clear that GRU does not support that. I don't support labor reductions myself. I think that it's detrimental to the infrastructure. So when we came back, the commission had stated that now they don't want layoffs. They want to look at vacant positions. Now, GRU is currently holding, I think, 84 vacant positions as of the end of April, but those positions change, right? So in 1 week, you could have 2 in one department. The next week, it's 2 in a different department. It's a bit of a moving target. So if we're saying that we want to reduce the quantity of FTEs that the utility holds, now we're permanently reducing FTEs in departments that may actually still need to fill those positions. So it's important to keep that flexibility to still be able to hire. Now, bear in mind, the hiring process at the city does take a while. So whenever we're looking for a position to put in one department, it can take several months to fill. So that position remains open. It's a vacant FTE. You're still actively trying to hire for that particular position. So what happens in some cases, you hire temporary labor in order to get the work done. So you're still paying for that money, even though you've got an FTE over here. So it gets kind of complicated, Member Rockwell.
Well, and let me add, Claudia, because I talked with Cheryl McBride, our Chief People Officer today, and there, out of those 84, I don't have the exact number, but there's contracts that are or there's positions that they're literally waiting for offers to be accepted. The 90% of those are in a 3 to 6 month period of vacancy, which is typical for how long it takes to get positions filled. And it's a moving target. Like I told the commission, we have a chief customer officer that left. We have somebody that's filling in as a temporary or is in an interim role. That could show as an unfilled position, and it gets frozen, and so we never fill one of the most important slots in the organization. We have some other positions like that throughout the organization. So, a freeze is kind of like a shotgun approach, and and just holding the vacancies and freezing the vacancies as they are would put us at really an extreme disadvantage operationally. So to answer your question directly, Member Rockwell, I do not support that at all, because I think what we would find ourselves in is less safe situations, less reliable situations, and then we're going to have incidents that cost us money.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I'll come back to that. My other question is kind of an off-the-wall question. I'm just curious. I know the GRU has a lot of facilities around town, and I'm just wondering if there's any available real estate, like office space, that could potentially, if you consolidated employees in one building, if then you could lease office space out as a potential source of revenue. It may be a crazy question. I don't know.
That's not a crazy question. Probably the biggest sellable parcel we have is our administration building downtown. And we know that we could get a one-time pop on that if it's probably sold with or without the power district. And then we consolidate our offices out at our operations center out along North Main Street. And whatever that profit would be, I don't know, $5, $6, $7, $10 million, that'd be a one-time shot. So that would get us through 1 year. Then you still have the problem, each and every year. That's why I talk about the fact that we have a structural deficiency here. We have a structural issue each and every year. This isn't changing. This isn't trying to, do something 1 year and hope that things get better the next year. So yeah, I think that is wise for us to look at, but and we are looking at those things. We're working with general government on that whole development of the power district, and they're considering those offices. But then again, in that one-time pop of some money, you would have the cost of relocating all the folks out there to that location as well, and fitting the offices, and that doesn't come cheap as well.
Right. Okay, those are the only questions I had. I'm just going to say, I find the whole thing to be extremely demoralizing. I would not support laying people off when I feel like the writing's been on the wall for a while, and it's just not what people want to hear. And I know what it's like to give people your best advice and have it be ignored because it's not what they want to hear. I think that deciding how much of profits you're going to take before you even know what the profits are actually going to be is poor planning. I think withdrawing cash from reserves to pay the difference is bad decision making. I'm trying to say this as diplomatically as possible, but this is a mess that I feel could have been avoided. I'm just going to stop there.
We have other members who would like to speak. I thought, yes, Member Miles first, please.
I have a question. I wanted to go back to your suggested solutions, because this is a presentation that you already gave to the City Commission. These are your 5 options that they're exploring. And up under you had customer bill impacts. I see the impact on average consumption and standard consumption, but I'm interested to know if you looked any at what these impacts would look like for the cost burden customers, because if these are your electrical, your standard consumption amounts for electricity, this is not what I see in my community. They're up with $300-400, and so I wanted to know what those increases would look like for them. And then I have to agree with Member Rockwell in that, and Claudia, when I first joined the UAB, my first budget season, we were predicting this, you all were predicting this very thing and talking about the GFT that time, and you're right, the City Commission did not act. But still, I'm like everyone else, would hate to see us lay off any of our FTEs. I don't think that's the solution. I don't know, as an advisor of this board, I would like to see more giving on the side of the commission, because at this point, when you talk about reducing, we get our ratings, and we have a utility company that's reliable, that we have good water, and we have all these great things going for us, and I would hate to see us sacrifice any of that service to our customers when we can find something different to do. Now, that being said, as a person that works in the community and works in housing and food accessibility and other issues that are facing our community, I must tell you that there is pressure also on the general government side to contribute more to these processes. Now, how do we do that with reducing their budget by $12 million is something that is out of my pay grade, and that we have to look at juggling, trying to see how we think outside the box. We have to do more research. I don't have the answers, but I can tell you it's not an easy discussion. We're sitting here and we're saying they need to reduce the GFT by 12 million. But as a community advisor, I can tell you that we're constantly asking them for increases to services to address issues that are facing our communities. Now, how do you do both, and how do we keep our customers healthy while considering raising their electrical rates for 7%? That would be cost burdensome to a lot of folk. And so, again, I don't have the answers. I'm just bringing up points that that we need to talk about and discuss before anything final is made, because I'm always wondering what is going to be the impact on the most vulnerable population in our city.
Thank you, Member Miles. Member Crow.
Mr. Chair, what is the role and responsibility of UAB in all this mess? Have we been asked to take a stand, or do we have a due date for any sort of action, or is there an expectation, or what do we have as a deliverable, an outcome of this discussion, which is so painful?
To answer your question directly, this item is proposed to us tonight simply as a presentation. No action is being asked of us. More generally speaking, our role is to advise the City Commission on utility policies, and the City Commission they are the policy decision makers. We advise, they decide. So we give it our best shot. We suggest, they take our ideas and considerations into consideration, and they act accordingly.
Do we have any timeframes, any time by which we need to come up with some plan of action or recommendations?
Well, this is the budget process, and Claudia can speak to the budget process, or any of the staff members, but we're working on the fiscal year 22 budget now, as far as this agenda item. More broadly speaking, we have our policy plan, which is somewhere, and then we have the integrated resource plan coming up in the next year. And we have inputs into each of those items. So those are the three different timelines we're looking at now. The budget, our policy plan, which is supposed to go before community hearings, meetings at some point, and then next year's integrated resource plan. Claudia, did you want to speak to the budget process?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Let's see, we're at May 13th. We've been directed to come back with option 5 with those changes to move up to a cap of 5 million at the next available meeting when we have the data together. So that could be anytime in early June or July. I think that the commission's only meeting one meeting a month through the next couple of months. So most likely it's going to be the June meeting. So that being said, we'll finish up that work and take it back to the commission. Then there are, I think, 2 budget meetings scheduled for July. I think regarding your role in policy creation and as an advisory board, the 4 ordinances or resolutions that we're preparing, one has been directed to go back directly to the commission, but the other 3, it makes sense to bring back to the advisory board for review. I would like to mention, and I'm not quite sure if Mark mentioned this, the draft energy policy that the UAB is putting together. If there are any revenue decreases due to conservation programs or expense increases within that policy, that none of that has been built into GRU's projections. So if there are impacts to that, it'll further exacerbate that difference between the revenues and expenses. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Do I have any further board comments?
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. Member Jacobson has had his hand up for a while.
I have not seen that, but thank you. Member Jacobson, please go ahead.
All right. Thank you. First, I just want to thank Mark and Claudia for doing a good job of presenting a really rough report. As Carla said, this was not unexpected. We've seen this coming for a number of years. I'm sorry, it is what it is. I do agree with Ed, and he kind of stole my thunder on this, that this idea of, oh, let's just eliminate the vacant FTEs is just such a random way to handle a situation. I wouldn't support that, or other labor reductions. In the past, I've been very reticent to make recommendations to the commission on GFT. But looking at what we're looking at, I'm changing my tune. I think what you've recommended with option 5, I mean, that's about probably as much rate increase as we can handle. And if we're not going to do these other things, the GFT is the only knob left to turn. So I would support that. One question I do have is on AMI. I mean, we talked about AMI, but with all the stuff going on right now, I guess the question is, why are we still continuing to move forward with AMI?
Because that has been the directive of the city commission. I brought that forward last night and said that, I mean, quite frankly, we might not move forward with AMI.
You've been muted. To unmute yourself.
Hi there. Do you have Armando with us?
Oh, hold on a second.
Okay, great. Thank you for calling back, and sorry about that inconvenience earlier.
I'm competing.
You are still the sole caller at the moment.
Okay, as soon as I'm finished. So that was the discussion we had with the city commission. Took away the funding. If they want to continue AMI, they've got to return the funding, which will ostensibly come through higher rates. the decision was not made for higher rates, therefore we can't sign the contract. We've been working on the contract, and as Claudia said, we might be coming back with in June or July. By that time, Itron might say those prices don't hold. If you want to do the contract, it's going to be more, because that was part of what we were discussing with them. Well, we had moved along so far that they wanted to increase their prices, and we said no. So you as a UAB, you could all decide that, you could recommend to the city commission that they don't proceed with AMI, given the situation.
Well, if I could ask, Ed, you and or your staff, what's your recommendation given the situation you're in, or we're in? I'm sorry.
I think that we had a plan that it would be funded through the 2019 transaction. That funding ought to be restored. The rates ought to go up, and we should make the cuts that we can to develop a floor for the utility. Putting in CIS without AMI is not necessarily a smart thing to do. It could result in additional costs of that implementation. So we already have a contract for CIS. It is funded. So we'd have to break that contract or try to defer it or do something else. So we're really in a mess in terms of those aspirations and wanting to do that. I do hear what you're saying, Member Jacobson. I had that same thought. Do we just shelve AMI right now? Because along with it comes, it's even harder to freeze any vacancies you have, because that's the other thing that Cheryl told me is some of the vacancies that are out there are to fill some of the work that will go in AMI and CIS.
And just to be clear, so my question was not, I wasn't trying to be a leading question. I truly wanted to know your guys' opinion on it.
Sure. No, they're great questions.
Thank you. Member Jacobson, do you have any more questions?
Thank you. That was it. Thank you.
Okay.
Looks like Tom wants to say something.
Yeah, Tom's giving you the little salute there.
Mr. Brown, would you like to speak?
The only point I want to make relative to AMI is that, our evaluation of the program is that over the life of the cycle, we'll spend the same amount of money, whether we put AMI in or not. With the AMI program, you front end load it because you're changing all the meters out and things like that. But with the reduction in O&M expenses, not to mention all the other benefits that come with it, at the end of the day, you're going to spend the same amount of money. So we can avoid, if we don't do it right now, don't think there's going to be any real savings by not doing it over the long haul.
Are there any other member comments before I make mine? All right.
I had a couple of questions.
Is this a member?
Oh, yeah, sorry. This is Jason Foltz.
Member Foltz. Oh, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to go back to the very last slide where you were showing the bill impacts of the rate increases. And you had the two different columns where you showed standard versus average consumption. And this is just something I've always wondered, and this seems as good a time as any to ask it. What is the value of showing standard, so-called standard consumption as opposed to average consumption? Where does that standard come from? I'm just curious.
We show standard consumption as a matter of practice when we're doing benchmarking, so that we are on the same level of usage as the peers that we're trying to benchmark against. But you're right, that doesn't necessarily have any particular relevance to how the usage in our community sits, and that's where the average consumption comes from.
Okay.
But
yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, no, I would also add that it doesn't necessarily have relevance in the other communities either. I think that, no, seriously, I mean, it's a good grab, 1,000 kW. I think we're down around 800. Other communities are 850. Some of them can be 10, over 1,000 kW. But at least it gives you that common, it's your miles per gallon kind of calculation. But it's a good question.
Well, it's always bothered me because I feel like it obscures the really solid work that has been done in this community around helping people to conserve. And to me, I always come back with these questions about talking about rate versus bills, right? And to me personally, and this will not win me many friends probably, but I'm pretty comfortable living in a high rate community that also has a really strong emphasis on conservation, because at the end of the day, what really matters is what it says on the bill. And so for me, I'm always much more interested in seeing that average consumption and having the conversation be framed around that average consumption, and as opposed to the standard. And then my second, just kind of a question here is, from you all's perspective, how much, if any, impact might theoretically result from the city moving away from what is currently a firm date on the 100% renewable goal? I'm just curious, when I see kind of the rationale for the downgrade, how big of a factor folks think that firm date really plays in that.
I think it's not as much the date as the fervency associated with it. They listen to this stuff, folks. And there's been discussions about every time we talk about 2045, it's always or sooner. And at some of the joint meetings, it's been, we can do 2030, can't we? And so they understand that the history of Gainesville also is one of the first things that got us a biomass plant was a community input into the integrated resource plan. The integrated resource, and look, folks, I'm just being honest here. Community input into the integrated resource plan changed the philosophy over to a renewable resource. It changed the basic philosophy of the utility. And as a result, you had action taken by the utility to follow the customers' and the citizens' wishes to the detriment of the financial health of the utility. Literally, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about this, because they said it in their own coded message in the report. They said what gave them pause, and I'm using my words here, but their words were that it was an unfunded mandate. And that's what always scares rating agencies. And because that's something that will make bondholders insecure and will make you a bad credit. So I think that's what it's all about. I mean, I understand why the fervor is there. I understand why the wish is there and why you want to move forward with that. But with every action comes a consequence. And part of the consequence to that fervor and how it's expressed is making rating agencies nervous.
Thank you. That was all my questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Member Foltz. Are there any other member comments before I make mine? Hearing none, I do have a prepared statement here, and it actually, many of the points that were brought up by members here tonight were covered, and particularly what Member Foltz just made helped a nice segue. If you want to tune out for the next couple of seconds, my short version, my elevator speech version is we need to raise rates. We have an amazing utility. We need to protect and preserve it. We need to raise rates. But I'm going to speak to all the correspondence that I've seen come across my desk and email and all the comments I've seen in the paper and comments that members have made tonight. And it's more of a general statement, perhaps stressing Member Crow's statements about what is our stance? What should we be saying? It is a misstatement to blame our current budgetary pressures on past mistakes. The solar feed-in tariff program and the biomass plant are not mistakes. They are two of our finest programs, each a true success story. It is also hypocritical to brag about how much progress we have made in obtaining renewable energy sources in one discussion and then bash the very programs that got us here in the other discussions. Now, I realize this is a budget discussion, but these two programs are integral and initial steps in reaching our goal of 100% renewable by 2045. These programs are not to blame for the budget success. It is how we have funded them and how we fund them now. We're at a point today where the only right and necessary thing to do is to raise our rates, to pay for the utility we deserve and demand. Like the false description of renewable energy programs as the cause of our budgetary pressures, the casting of higher rates as inevitably inequitable to ratepayers is also false. The average consumer does not care about the rate per se. It is a total bill being paid at the end of the month that is a paramount concern. We need to fund conservation programs that will reduce the total energy consumption and thus the total amount paid. We need to double down on funding and implementing the Low-Income Energy Efficiency Program Plus, LEAP, and the Community Weatherization Coalition. This, to address Member Miles' comments, this is how we address the inequities of higher rate impacts, by reducing the total amount paid by those who can least afford it. Folks, we have an outstanding utility, one that we are all justifiably proud of in all that it has accomplished and in the excellent service it provides to us, the citizens of this community. The plain, simple truth is that this excellence costs money. There is no such thing as a free lunch. We have a great utility. We should be proud of it. We need to pay for it. We must raise the rates needed to adequately fund the programs and services needed and demanded by our community, and to double down through energy conservation on reducing the impacts of those rates for those who can least afford them. We must focus on building up and not tearing down this utility so that it best serves us all. We can't keep kicking the can down the road. It's unpalatable, but it's necessary. We really do need to raise rates, and that's just the opinion of this one board member. Thank you for your consideration. Other comments?
Well, I'd just like to add that I've had to deal with GRU on an up close and personal basis the last couple of days. And that whole idea of getting rid of positions, I'm going to reiterate what everybody else has said. I've been in organizations in aerospace and at the university that did exactly what Ed is talking about when you do a reduction of open positions. It sucks. It's not the way to do it. It's trying to, get rid of cockroaches in your house and your only tool is a shotgun. So, yeah, maybe that's a little bit too blunt, but the fact of the matter is that's just a poor mechanism to solve our problems. And again, I appreciate Chair Wheeler's comments and agree with him wholeheartedly.
Member Jacobson, are you raising your hand or are you moving? He's not raising his hand. Do we have any public comments?
Here on the phones, we do have at least one public comment at this time, Mr. Chair. Would you like to take it now or later?
Well, I didn't. Fletcher, is it okay if we go ahead and public comments?
Oh, sure.
Yes, if you would, please.
Excellent. The first on the lines is Armando Grundy Gomez. Mr. Gomez, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Chair, the first thing I want to do is I want to thank Claudia, Scott Benton, and Mr. Bolarski on a well-presented presentation to you all. The other thing that I want to bring to the attention, it's disconcerting when I hear members say they want to live in a high-rate area for the utility and they want renewable energy. And I think that's concerning from what we just heard from the last 2 weeks, and I'll say this is why. If that member was so wanting to live in a high utility rate, and it's a certain demographic of people that are paying those high utility rates, because it came out this week that there's large segments of our population, specifically African American or Black people, that are paying higher rates to support renewable energy, to including trash and recycling. That's really rich if somebody's going to actually say that's okay, when they also talk in the same breath of wanting equity. And if that's equitable to you to charge black people more when everybody else has to pay a less rate, I call that discrimination and racism. Number two is if we want to do all these magnificent things, when we have the utilities saying that they've been saying this is not new, if we want to all of a sudden develop the new, out of the Trump playbook, alternative facts, well, 12 million doesn't mean 12 million, it really means 2 million. We already have a problem. I don't think when Mr. Belarski is talking about a structural deficiency, he's been saying this for the last 4 to 5 years. A structural deficiency means that the city commission has a Tesla or Mercedes-Benz appetite for what it wants to do, but only a Honda Civic budget to which to spend. And so that is the main problem. So when people are around gallivanting, Mr. Chair, that we want to do all these great things, they're doing it on the backs of African-American people, exploiting a lot of people. That's not okay. And now they're proposing not just a 7% rate, Mr. Belarski brought that, but also when it comes to sewage and wastewater. And it just doesn't seem, they don't seem to get it. And it's not that the city commission is a part of the problem. They are the problem. They are the problem because they are who they are, because this is the same thing. These are the same folks that said to us that they have attacked the equal opportunity director, who happens to be a black woman, who was exposing this nonsense. They attack and say black people who speak up, that we're angry. We're not angry, but if it's somebody like Wes, you, Wes Wheeler, or somebody else, you're passionate. But we as black people are angry. No, we're not angry, and we're not stupid either. I am a black man, a highly intelligent black man. You may not like me, you may not, but I can guarantee you two things. You understand what I'm articulating to you right now. You can understand what I'm saying to you right now. And Mr. Belarski will attest to you that I've spoken to him and understand structural budgets very well. This is nonsense. And if we're not cutting 12 million, what the city commission is having convinced you to do.
Mr. Gomez?
Yes?
We're done. I'm sorry. I hate to tell you your 3 minutes are up.
Okay.
Thank you. Next up, Nancy Darren. Ms. Darren, you have 3 minutes.
Wow, I really appreciate what Wes said and some of the others of you. And now I got to regroup my thoughts here. So the city commission was extremely clear in their meeting last night that they were not going to support layoffs. They did ask about looking at vacancies, that as a question, not I don't know. They were so clear, no cutting any FTEs at GRU. That was not going to work. And we need to look at other stuff. As I've said, we're hitting the wall between old regulatory structures, old rate structures that were based on very different assumptions. As Commissioner, as Mr. Wheeler pointed out, we started making really good decisions in 2007 toward conservation, toward dealing with climate and and looking at people's health. We put scrubbers on the old coal plant to reduce mercury. And because we're not a pure natural gas utility, we're diversified, we're strong, we have incredible highly skilled operators who, as has been noted, are keeping these aging plants going so well that we don't have to replace stuff now. Anyway, the American Rescue Plan, there is federal money that is poised to pour in. I hope and think we have, we may have an opportunity here to, with very serious structural discussions, that we may have some money that we can use to address some of this immediate crisis, continue to move in the right direction. Rates do not equal bills, but we have to deal with the inequities of inadequate housing and all the other things that you all speak to, and making sure that we don't burden our already burdened and most vulnerable citizens here. But everybody, the alarm bells are going off. We are out of time, and the heat index, the global warming climate crisis is here and upon us, and the cost of not acting is going to be far, far worse, and we will go under. Finally, the rating agencies are all going through changes. S&P just seriously downgraded Exxon and Chevron because they weren't facing climate change. So I think a lot of things are going to be changing.
Ms. Darren?
And let's keep going.
We're done. Sorry. All righty. Our next caller is Mr. Nathan Scott. Mr. Scott, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, so good evening, members. Nathan Scott. So I just want to state for the record, I'd like to take the opportunity to correct the record and ongoing false narratives originating from Member Wheeler and the UAB. The root cause of the current two-notch GRU debt downgrade is the ongoing financial mismanagement of GRU at the hands of the mayor of the Gainesville City Commission, unnecessary expansion of city government, and the ongoing spending addiction of the mayor and the Gainesville City Commission, who continue spending more and more money that they don't have at every single meeting. Raising GRU rates is not the solution. The solution is cut the GFT. You've heard the general manager and GRU management and myself say that for years. I've said it for a decade. Member Wheeler, you seem to have, with all due respect, a fundamental misunderstanding of well-accepted principles of utility rate making. Energy conservation will not solve GRU's financial problems. If GRU has less revenue, it still has the same revenue requirement and fixed costs, which will make rates go even higher, which further disadvantage low-income families, hardworking Gainesville families, and local business who have the highest electric rates in the state of Florida. And that's what seems to be kind of lost on the UAB. Is that we're not exercising independent judgment or a fiduciary duty. We're punting when it comes to, it's not our role to tell the city commission what to do. I respectfully disagree. You're supposed to be an advisory board, not cheerleaders. And this poor housing stock is another false narrative. You know, the city commission has never talked about poor housing stock until they invented this talking point to deflect attention away from GRU having the highest electric rates in the state of Florida due to the ongoing financial mismanagement of GRU at the hands of the mayor and the Gainesville City Commission. Again, this problem could have been solved. The debt downgrade could have been avoided had they just merely cut the GFT. And they refused to do so because they're more interested about talking about all their other pet projects than managing what used to be the city's most valuable asset. It's now they continue to destroy what little is left of that asset. It's tragic to watch, but I don't really see any change in thinking. I mean, you guys remain, at least from what I heard in some of the comments, primarily from Member Wheeler, that the two-notch debt downgrade should have come as a wake-up call. It should have been a come to Jesus moment. You guys are agnostic to it and still making excuses. And that's just ridiculous. It's not good governance by any measure. You're not exercising your fiduciary duty to the utility, and you're just going along to get along with whatever the damn city commission wants. Raising rates is not the solution. We need financial fiscal responsibility on the city side. GRU management has told you that tonight. I've told you that as a former state utility regulator. I've said it for a decade, well before Ed Volarski ever got here, that you need to cut the GFT. And who's been right and who's wrong? Clearly, the philosophy of the Gainesville City Commission isn't working, as evidenced by the 5 debt downgrades that occurred since 2012. And we're going for 6 and 7. So AMI should be deferred by 1 or 2 years at a minimum
Scott.
To avoid you having to go to the debt markets before you think you're going to have another debt downgrade. Thank you.
Mr. Scott, thank you, sir. Mr. Chair, we've got a couple of callers out there. We haven't pre-screened them yet. I'm going to ask you just to hold on a quick minute while we screen them. And we'll get their names and make sure that that everybody understands the rules of the game.
Yeah, while you're waiting to screen, we actually have a member comment here, so I'll let that member comment go ahead while you're doing that.
Perfect.
Member Rockwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to remind everybody that this is the Utility Advisory Board. We advise the City Commission on matters pertaining to the utility. Other projects that the City Commission wants to do and fund and things that plans that they have for the city, we don't have any say in that. So, you know, we're talking about things that we can do to fix this situation. One of them being rate increases, which I do agree with. Another being lowering the GFT, or at least not, deciding how much the GFT is going to be after you know how much money the utility has made. But I got news for you. If the GFT is reduced to where it needs to be, guess what? Property taxes are going to go up. That's not the purview of this board, but I think it's worth saying, because whether it's this commission or some other commission, there are things that need to be done. There's stuff costs money. So, hammering us about what the city commission does isn't helpful. It is what it is. And I also want to say that, rates, as far as rates go, everybody in town pays the same rates. It's not like going to the grocery store and deciding if you're going to buy name brand or generic. We all get the same power and water. We all pay the same rates, and I'll stop there.
Thank you, Member Vaca.
Chair Wheeler, I think Claudia has her hand up.
Okay, Claudia, go ahead, please.
I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I wanted to clarify something in the presentation. When you were making your comments, it became clear that there's a miscommunication about the term past decisions, and I'd like to clarify what that actually means from a financial perspective. So the past decisions to look for renewable energy sources to make this community better, to make the world better, are all good things. The past decision that we were referring to was the cost of that. Because when you're looking at the debt service for the utility, right now it's 90+ million. It's scheduled to go up to 110 million. 30+ million is sitting there because of the cost of the biomass plant. It wasn't that the biomass plant was a bad decision, it was the cost. So when that PPA was signed, it locked in certain dollars, and you guys know the history over the past several years. So I just want to make sure that particular piece is clear. It's just how much we paid for it, right? So I appreciate you allowing me to speak on that topic, Chair.
And to clarify, I'm not debating that. I think the costs are justifiable. It's that we needed to fund it. It's not the program, it's the funding that's the issue. That's my point. I think we're in agreement on that. Mr. Member Crow, you had a comment?
Yeah, I've just got a couple of quick questions. In the newspaper, GRU was quoted as saying that one of the reasons why we've had this mess is because of the solar FIT. And in one of the documents we got from Ed Bolarski, said the solar FIT is 5.5 million. I'm wondering if we could just have a real short report.
Yeah, if Mr. Crow, if I may, that's going to take a while. Can we finish public comment?
Yeah.
Please, because that's going to take an extended report. I thought you just had a comment on Claudia's.
All right.
If we could go ahead with public comment, please.
We're actually good on public comment. We pre-screened, and those comments need not hit the floor.
Thank you.
We have had all the member comments and on this matter. Member Crow, you want a follow-up report? Maybe. How do we go? You want to do like a one-on-one with staff, or is this going to take some more time? I just have a question. If we could have a short report sent to us on the solar FIT, for example, how many ratepayers have taken advantage of that? What's the average cost? What's the average megawatt impact? What's the average, kilowatt hours per month or kilowatt hours per year? Just the standard sort of stuff to allow us to see the size of the elephant, In addition to that, we've talked about increasing rates. I wondered if we could just have a very short report of the comparable rates in other municipal utilities around the state, in Jacksonville, Tallahassee, Orlando, wherever, just to give us an idea of how the rate structure that we're looking at here compares at these other locations.
So if we could schedule that for one of our workshops, those reports?
Yeah.
That would be good. So if
I would add that if Member Crow wants the comparables, just go to the FMEA site that gives the monthly reports. And I can send that link out to everybody, because there's no sense in waiting for something like that when you can click on something tonight and look at it.
And for the explanation, FMEA is the Florida Municipal Electric Association. We got it, okay.
There's that acronym again.
I know, I just try to repeat them for public.
No, thank you.
If there's no further comments, there's no action taken here. I'd like to move on to the next item, which is the American Public Power Association National Conference. The board choose up to 2 members to attend the conference. I'll leave this up to board discussion. I will say that, my personal opinion, I'd like to see some of the newer members who have come on the board have this experience. 2 of us have been to previous ones, and we both found it very useful, Member Miles and myself. So with that, I'll let it open to the board and expressions of interest. When I say newer members of the board, I'm looking at members Foltz, Crow, and Rockwell.
Approve. I'm a newbie here, so I would be happy to go. But if somebody else wanted to go, I'd be very happy to defer to somebody else who really thought they should attend.
Member Miles, you have a comment?
I do have a comment. I think I noticed, Mr. Crow, no criticism at all, but you have a lot of questions to dig deep in. And when I went to this particular conference, I can tell you there are a lot of answers, and there are a lot of different minds, and the breakout sessions are awesome, and it leaves room for a lot of robust conversation. I think you can gather a whole lot from that conference that can help us here on the day as we go along. So I would even suggest that if you're willing to go, that you are absolutely one of the ones that can go, because of how inquisitive you are about different things.
What about my online members Porter, Jacobson, and Foltz? Do any of you have comments?
I'm trying to disentangle myself from 27 years of employment, and I've got octopus legs all over me. I'll have to defer on going anywhere.
Member Foltz has his hand up.
Thank you.
Member Foltz, please go ahead.
Thank you. I actually had a question. I noticed in the agenda, it was discussed the in-person conference and the virtual conference as kind of a package thing. And I just was curious, would it need to be 2 people attending both of those, or would it be possible to kind of break that up if people wanted to or were more available to go to one or the other?
Robin, do you want to take that?
I will take that. I did ask the someone from APPA about that. There are 2 options. You can either do just the virtual conference, or you can do the in-person, and that gives you the option of also doing virtual with the in-person. There, you can't split those 2. There are different costs. If you just do virtual, it of course costs less, but then you don't have access to as many options, as many different breakout sessions and pre-conference seminars as you would with the in-person. But if you do the in-person, it does come along with the option of doing virtual as well. They do not allow, I couldn't pay one price and let one of you do in-person and the other one take the virtual piece of it. They don't allow that. It would have to be the same person who's doing the in-person. In other words, if for instance, they have sometimes webinars, and I would have to pay separately for each person who wanted to take one. They won't allow you to share that.
Okay, thank you for that, Robin. So my situation, just because of my class schedule this summer, it would actually be, I could probably do the in-person conference it would be more difficult for me to do the virtual conference just because of timing and my class schedule. So I was going to say, if there was someone on the board who was available to do both, I would be happy to defer so that, you know, somebody could maximize their participation. But if not, then I would be able to attend and would be interested in attending the in-person conference, and then I could maybe catch parts of the virtual conference.
Member Miles, you had another comment?
I just wanted to add that if one else, because I'm always moving in solution-based, and Member Crow, as I said before, there is so much, especially at the in-person conference. I'm willing to go and bring back information and reports, but if I just wanted to defer for some of the newer folk, especially if they can attend the in-person conference, so that they can really not just go to the breakout sessions, but it's important to network. I did a lot of networking when I went, and it was beneficial not just here on the dais, but also in the community when it comes to different solutions. So.
Thank you. I have heard expressions of interest from Member Foltz and from Member Crow. By process of elimination, I'm looking at Member Rockwell and asking what his.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have looked at the schedule. I'm definitely interested. I see some topics of interest to me, and it would be a cool thing to do. My current work situation is such that doesn't really leave me with a lot of time or energy for much else. I just don't think I would be able to work it into my schedule this year. Maybe do they have to send two? Maybe they can save a little money and we just send one person. But I don't know. I'm just it's not going to work for me. I don't think this year.
I'm going to suggest that we send Member Foltz and Member Crow, and that we ask each of them to bring back as much material as they can to share with other board members, including Member Rockwell, if he's not able to attend. And then perhaps in future years it will work out for you. Is that okay with you, Member Miles?
That's fine with me. Is one of them going to go in person?
I believe Member Foltz is going in person. I do not know whether Member Crow is going in person or virtual.
I can go down there in person.
There you go.
Okay, so we have two who are interested in going in person. I don't see any heads bobbing from Member Jacobson or Member Porter. So unless there's any further comment, I'm going to recommend that we go with Member Foltz and Member Crow. And do we have to vote on this, Robin, or can we just take our? We just chose. How's that?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, we have two public commenters who might want to lend a perspective to this before you make a firm decision.
Okay, then please, public comment.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. The first of our commenters is Ms. Nancy Darren. Ms. Darren, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. This is such an important and excellent meeting to attend. I'm thrilled Mr. Crow and folks want to go and do the in-person. I think I can't hear through this phone very well. Anyway, just looking at some of the sessions, it's so relevant, and to have two people go, have the experience, and be able to bring back to the rest of the group, it makes a huge difference having two. But I'm looking, utility transformation, there's a group that's doing Smart Electric Power Alliance. I started to look it up last night, and it looked like an amazing thing. Effective IRP planning, bond rating, talking with the agencies about this stuff, planning for EV. I mean, given the conversation you all just had and what we're staring in the face, this is so timely and relevant, and I hope will be incredibly beneficial. So thank you, and worthy investment. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Darren. And next up, we have Mr. Nathan Scott. Mr. Scott, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, members. Nathan Scott. So I just want to note for the record, for all the members' edification, that this $5,500 expense is a discretionary expenditure of GRU customer money, not your money. Point being here, commissioners, is that GRU is under a mountain of debt. $1.7 billion, projected to go to $3.1 billion. And that projection is unsustainable. If we can't pay for our debt now, how's GRU going to pay for $1.3 billion later? I mean, does anyone other than me not see the fiscal irresponsibleness of sending training? Because this isn't how things work in the real world, people. In the real world, this would be a discretionary expenditure that would be cut immediately. We wouldn't be having this discussion. So hopefully there's some mature adults in the room that know the responsibility that goes with making tough decisions in a fiscal environment where you have high leverage, high rates that are going even higher. And you just got a double downgrade that everyone's agnostic to and continues to want to make excuses. And you know what? Talking to the credit rating agencies, I think they'd laugh if they talked or listened to a lot of what they heard. I mean, Mr. Pilarski stated that they had concerns about some of the proposals made by the UAB, which aren't in line with, provides a lot of regulatory uncertainty, which causes debt downgrades. So you don't have to like what I say, but my track record speaks for itself. And I would respectfully state that the policies of the Gainesville City Commission aren't working, particularly when it comes to respect to their ongoing financial mismanagement of GRU at the hands of the mayor and the Gainesville City Commission, because the debt's been downgraded 5 times. 2012, we're looking at debt downgrades 6 and 7. When GRU goes back to market to issue more debt, which is fiscally irresponsible. There's no discussion about cutting AMI, but you guys want to send yourself to Orlando to go to a junket. And so let's talk about this. I don't want to be critical of the UAB, but help me help you, members. Help me help you. Because this is our money. This is GRU money, and you need to lead by example. And when you're going off on junkets to Orlando, whatever, in times of financial crisis, it sends the wrong message. So I'd ask you to reevaluate this and apply the $5,500, no matter how small the number, to servicing GRU's debt is a constructive solution rather than continuing to be grifters. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Chair, that's our last caller. The floor is yours.
Thank you. As we've heard from public comment, we've had board members. I don't think a formal vote is required here. It didn't say it, so I'm going to go ahead and say Member Fultz and Member Crow. Please bring back some wonderful information from Orlando for us. Network. Bring back the solutions that we need to get us out of all our issues and questions now. That's a tall order for you, Member Crow. Any other member comments in general from
Chair Wheeler, before we move on from this item, if I could please, I just want to tell members Crow and Fultz that our window for registering is very narrow because we had to wait to put this on the agenda. So I will be in touch with you both tomorrow to talk to you about some of the information that I need to be able to register you. And so it's very important that I be able to reach you tomorrow. So if you hear me calling, please answer. Thank you.
And both members will be available tomorrow yes, I see Member Crow. Member Fultz, you're going to be available tomorrow?
Yes, I will be. Thank you.
Are there any further member comments? I've been looking forward to doing this for 2 hours now. We are adjourned.